Welcome, everyone. I am Adeshewa Josh, and this is Africa Matters. We begin in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where thousands of civilians have been displaced due to resurgent attacks linked to the M23 rebel group. And Amnesty International reports that 750,000 South African students have dropped out of school since the COVID-19 pandemic began, worsening inequality. And in Nigeria, we talk to a coach who is taking children off the streets and giving them a second chance in life through volleyball. There's been a resurgence in brutal attacks by the M23 rebel group in the east of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. On Sunday, the militant group hit Congolese army positions in Shanzu and Ruyoni villages in North Kivu province, near the border with Uganda and Rwanda. The UN says the group has killed nearly 2,300 civilians this year alone. The Red Cross says 6,000 Congolese refugees have fled across the border into Uganda since Sunday's attack. And the UN also says that since November, there's been an increase in attacks targeting refugee camps by several other militant groups operating in eastern DRC. That has triggered a new wave of mass displacement in a region already hosting nearly 2 million internally displaced people.
We were just told that M23 have come back again. They emerged from the forest to attack the Congolese government. At the moment, we're just seeing the government forces driving up and down the road, but we don't have a solution yet.
Meanwhile, Sunday's attack is stoking long-standing tensions between the DRC and its neighbor, Rwanda. The Congolese army accuses the Rwandan government of backing the M23's armed rebellion. Kigali denies the allegations.
These are false accusations, but that does not mean that there are no problems.
So, who are the M23 rebels and what do they want? M23 stands for the March 23rd Movement, also known as the Congolese Revolutionary Army. It's made up of former members of the National Congress for the Defense of the People, or CNDP, an armed political group in the DRC. M23 refers to a peace agreement signed with the Congolese government on March 23, 2009, which the rebels claim was never fully implemented. M23 rebels are largely from the Tutsi ethnic group and have close ties to the Tutsi minority in neighboring Rwanda. Their rebellion began in April 2012 when they mutinied over low wages and poor conditions in the Congolese army. Now, they were defeated in 2013, and a ceasefire agreement to demobilize and integrate the rebels was signed later that year. But the M23 has since accused Kinshasa of refusing to honor the terms of the agreement. On Tuesday, 8 UN peacekeepers were killed in a helicopter crash amid a fierce gun battle between M23 rebels and government forces in the eastern DRC. The casualties include 6 crew members from Pakistan and 2 military personnel from Russia and Serbia. The Congolese army says the helicopter was shot down by M23 rebels, an allegation the group denies. The head of the UN peacekeeping mission in the DRC, Bintou Keita, says the renewed violence is a symptom of unresolved issues that must be addressed to avoid further escalation.
Nous devons cependant être réalistes.
We must be realistic and face the facts. Without approaches that address both causes and symptoms, our resources and those of the DRC's armed forces will remain insufficient in such a deteriorating security situation. This illustrates the limitations of relying solely on security operations to resolve conflicts. While I condemn in the strongest terms the attacks by armed groups against civilians, I reiterate my call for the government to implement comprehensive political strategies, including reforms that address the root causes of these conflicts, which will make lasting peace possible.
Let's hear more from Vava Tampa, founder of Save the Congo. He joins me from London. Thank you so much for joining us on Africa Matters. My first question, what's driving the resurgence of militant attacks in eastern DRC?
Well, the key reason is impunity. The reason we are seeing more and more militia gangs taking guns or arms and killing civilians and brutalizing the local populations and displacing the local population is because of impunity. The M23 specifically, it's a Paul Kagame's personal militia gang. it's really, really crucial that your viewers should remember the M23 started back in 1998 as a different militia gang called RCD Goma. RCD Goma, after committing so many war crimes and so many crimes against humanity, was rebranded and they became CNDP in 2006. CNDP equally, after committing so many war crimes and so many crimes against humanity, lost their, if you like, their reputations internationally, or their support internationally. They became an embarrassment to Paul Kagame. So CNDP rebranded itself and became M23, and M23 continues to commit crimes against the Congolese people since they were essentially defeated in 2012.
Vava, let me come in here quickly. In a recent interview with President Paul Kagame, this same allegation was put forward to him that, you know, Rwanda is still supporting M23, which he denies. He says, and I quote, that all of these rebel groups operating in Eastern DRC are not operating in the interest of the three neighboring countries, namely Rwanda, Uganda, and the DRC. So what more proof do we have that Rwanda is still backing the M23 rebels?
Well, it's a complete lie. Equally, if you go back in 2012, Paul Kagame was denying globally on national television that Rwanda was not, that he was not sending guns.
Well, would we say, to what end would you say it is that the M23 destabilized the DRC and the whole of the region? What does Rwanda stand to gain in the meantime and in the long run?
Rwanda stand to gain two main elements. The first key element that Rwanda stand to gain is continued access to Congolese natural resources. That's the first key element that Rwanda stand to gain. And we know, for instance, I'll give you one example, Uganda, for instance, which is also another country which has been sponsoring and supporting M23 as well as other militia gangs, going back to 1998 when Paul Kagame and Yoweri Museveni created RCD Goma, which became all the different militia gangs that continue to terrorize the Congolese people. They stand to gain access to Congolese natural resources.
Well, but then what then do you say to the fact that when the M23 was disbanded in 2013, they were promised this reintegration, demobilization, disarmament, but none of that has happened since 2013. Or should I say that the agreement has not been fully implemented, and the M23 is saying that that's why they have resorted to violence?
Oh, no, that's a complete lie. We need to revisit history. So remember, CNDP essentially signed a peace deal with the Congolese government. CNDP decided to become a political party, and they became a political party. They stood for election in 2011 for the legislative election. CNDP won zero, nothing, not a single seat in the 500 seat in Congo, essentially showing that local population do not support militia gangs which have been created and supported by people like Paul Kagame. And because CNDP did not win a single seat in 2011, that's what happened in 2012. They picked up arms again. Now this time they decided to rebrand themselves. They are calling themselves M23. That's when the whole situation changed. This is absolutely nothing to do with something the Congolese people have done.
Let's move forward a little bit, and you may have heard what the UN Special Representative in the DRC said. She said that the government there should undertake comprehensive political strategies to address the root causes of the conflict, instead of relying on just military measures. What do you think those root causes are? And I know you've mentioned some of them, and you have said, you have mentioned a couple of points, but how do you think that they should be resolved?
In a very practical measure, the same way this fighting was ended in 2012, what we need to see is essentially a SADC-led firefighting brigade on the ground to chase out the M23. You cannot, we cannot, the Congolese people will not give legitimacy to a militia gangs created by a neighboring government in order to terrorize the Congolese people. So M23 will need to be chased out of Congo the same way they were chased out of Congo in 2012. In addition to being chased out of Congo, the Congolese government will need to bring people like Paul Kagame, as well as people like James Kabarebe, who the UN said was actually the de facto leader of the M23 militia gangs in 2012. They ought to be brought to justice. They need to answer for their crimes, including the killings and the targeting of UN peacekeepers.
That's
Only
right.
those two are on the table.
As soon as they get credible proof that Rwanda is associated with the M23 and is indeed supporting them, sounds like you're very convinced that that's a great way to go. Vava Tampa, founder of Save the Congo, thank you so much for speaking to Africa Matters. We have more stories coming up for you here on Africa Matters, including
what happens when you combine grassroots activism with volleyball? I am Paulum David. I'll tell you how one man is smashing social barriers through sports.
Amnesty International says that the coronavirus pandemic last year further entrenched systemic inequality. In South Africa, school dropout rates were already high before strict COVID-19 measures were imposed. Now, students there are feeling the impact of worsening inequality, as Nsapeng Motema reports from Johannesburg.
Putting in extra hours to help keep children in school. Nonhlanhla Hleza assists students in her community having academic difficulties, giving them one-on-one lessons in their homes.
Hleza, a public school teacher, is part of a group of educators who also offer tutoring services at minimal fees outside of regular classes, and in cases where families cannot pay, they do it for free.
The tutoring, it's working, and it needs to be localized because these things are foreign to our own mothers in townships. So it needs to be something that is easy, accessible, so that even a child that comes from a destitute family can access these things.
Today, she is doing math tutoring for 17-year-old Ncumisa Mpangeva, whose goal is to one day become a civil engineer.
I was overwhelmed. I had mental breakdowns like, in life I can't leave school.
South Africa has a crisis of school dropouts, especially in state schools. The dropout rate has always been high, and the coronavirus pandemic has made the problem even worse. According to Amnesty International, around 750,000 school children had not returned to school by May of last year. That's more than 3 times as many as before the pandemic.
During COVID-19 lockdowns, schools closed and access to online education was available only to a small minority. After classes went back in session and students in public schools had access to teachers again, those struggling to catch up lost heart and dropped out.
It's also about economics. Many parents lost their jobs during the pandemic and could no longer afford tuition and school uniforms. Amnesty International lays the blame for this and other human rights abuses that occurred during the pandemic squarely at the feet of government and big corporations. Launching its annual report on the global state of human rights in Johannesburg on Monday, the organization said South African leaders failed to implement promised COVID-19 recovery plans. South Africa is not alone. The rights group says wealthy nations also had a hand in increasing economic and social disparity worldwide.
We are confronted with such utter failure, selfishness, greed, complicity, lack of imagination, inability to think a different path, but the one that is bringing us closer to the abyss every day. Frankly, we have no choice but to make our voices heard and to fight every attempt to silence us.
Instead of global solidarity, rich countries pursued national interests by hoarding vaccines and allowed for existing inequalities to worsen. To reverse this trend, Amnesty says people around the world need to form a global movement for justice where together they can demand better governance and the protection of each other's rights. That way, students like Ncumisa can have a chance to achieve their dreams. Nsepeng Mutima, Africa Matters, Vosloorus Township, South Africa.
We head to Nigeria next, where the UN Children's Agency, UNICEF, says that 10.5 million children do not attend school, many of them due to poverty. Vincent Onugu, a volleyball coach in Abuja, is trying to change that by giving students from less privileged families a chance to rise up and earn scholarships through sports. Polom David reports.
These children hope to compete in international volleyball tournaments. And for the past 9 years, Vincent Onugu has been helping young people turn that dream into a reality. Onugu is a former national volleyball player who won a gold medal at Nigeria's National Sports Festival in 2012. He retired shortly after and turned his hand to coaching. He would approach young people on the streets of Nigeria's capital, Abuja, who were not attending school, encouraging them to have a go at volleyball, which could lead them to getting back into the education system.
Most of them gave the excuse that they cannot afford to pay their school fees. That was why they are hockey in the afternoon, some even in the morning when their mates are in school. That was one of the things that kept me in the system of teaching children volleyball, so that there will be an interaction, that we connect them with people in the volleyball cycle that can afford to help them.
Playing at volleyball tournaments such as this provides opportunities to showcase young talent and offers a springboard for the best athletes to reach higher levels, including playing at national and international stages.
Some of the children Onugu has coached are now members of the national volleyball team. Sadiq Ahmed is one of them. Onugu started coaching him when he was 15 years old.
I have also played in the national levels. Like the opportunity I got to play national levels, I played for the Nigeria under 17 in Cotonou. I played in Nigeria.
Onugu also coaches a female volleyball team. Naomi Yaro is 17 years old and has been playing for 9 years.
I started volleyball when I was 8 years old. Back then, when he saw me, I was actually fighting with my friend. So he picked me up. He was like, I should stop fighting. Then from there, he was not like, okay, I should come and join a game that is called volleyball.
And many of the parents of Onugu students sing his praise. Medals that her 16-year-old son, Onyedikachi, has won proudly hang on the walls of her living room.
When he took Onyedika in that volleyball, he's 5 years, he told me that this boy is full of talent. He will not allow him to waste it.
Onugu has coached more than 100 young people. He has secured scholarships for 22 children in secondary schools, while another 12 have been awarded to students in university. 9 others have secured jobs in the Nigerian Armed Forces, and one former student is now playing professional volleyball in Japan. But he's hamstrung by a lack of funds, needing more courts as the popularity of volleyball within his community continues to grow. Polum David, Africa Matters, Abuja.
Are NFTs, or non-fungible tokens, the future of art? Some artists in Africa seem to think so. NFTs use the same technology as cryptocurrencies, and they are allowing some creatives to make a lot of money on digital art. Adama Munu reports.
From the first SMS in history to versions of priceless Da Vinci masterpieces, non-fungible tokens are taking the art industry by storm. Lagos-based digital artist Abdulrahman used to sell his work online, but since making the switch to selling his art as NFTs last year, he says he's been given life-changing opportunities.
People that have been selling their art for like probably $200 can just one day wake up and like see their work selling for about like $14,000. And the one thing about the NFT is that once you sell your work to someone and that person resells your work, you get royalty.
A non-fungible token is a unit of data that represents objects like photos, videos, art, and music. They are typically held on blockchains, which are public ledgers that record transactions. The buyer receives a verified digital token which proves the artwork is an original and has a unique code. NFTs are the digital world's answer to art collectibles, and artists can sell their work directly to the consumer without going through auction houses. And that means more money.
It makes us compete completely at the same time with everyone in the world. Things used to be slow, trends would start in America and will get to us a year later or 2 years later. Now we are current.
But the buzz NFTs have created is matched by concerns by environmentalists. They're sounding alarm bells over the amount of computer power required to verify digital tokens.
So every time you create a token, it's a transaction on the blockchain. Every transaction demands a certain amount of power. Unfortunately, it's been misconstrued a little bit. It's been taken out of context largely in the media because, for example, the traditional banking world uses an incredible amount of power every single day to do our, internet banking, online banking, these transfers, those transfers. The blockchain is a fraction of that.
Dan is the co-founder of the Tree Collective, which is using NFTs to propel artists into an increasingly digital world. The Tree is collaborating with environmental NGO Greenpop, so artists can plant trees to offset the carbon emitted from their crypto art sales.
The blockchain that we chose to use is known as the Polygon blockchain. So whereas Ethereum is doing 1,000 transactions a second, this blockchain is doing 100,000 transactions a second, which basically means that the impact on the environment for every NFT is fractional, if any at all.
Not everyone is embracing NFTs, but they're offering new possibilities for a new generation of artists, and they're not going anywhere anytime soon. Adam Amunu, Africa Matters.
You're watching Africa Matters, and here's a roundup of other stories making news across the continent. About 900 Ethiopians, including many women with young children, have arrived back in Addis Ababa from Saudi Arabia. The Ethiopian Foreign Ministry says they are the first of about 100,000 nationals who will be repatriated over the coming months after an agreement was signed between the two countries. Human rights organizations accuse Riyadh of detaining illegal migrants in inhumane conditions. Over the last 4 years, nearly 352,000 Ethiopians have been returned home from the Gulf nation, according to the International Organization for Migration. At least 9 people have been killed and many others are missing after gunmen blew up the rail track and opened fire on a passenger train traveling from the Nigerian capital Abuja to the city of Kaduna. Almost 1,000 people were on board at the time of the attack. No group has claimed responsibility, but heavily armed criminal gangs known locally as bandits are thought to be behind the attack. And as Ramadan approaches, Muslims in countries like Somalia and Nigeria say they are struggling to buy basic staples because of skyrocketing food and fuel prices. During the Islamic holy month, millions of Muslims across Africa refrain from eating from dawn to dusk, then break their fast with lavish family meals. But Russia's attack on Ukraine has disrupted the global supply of commodities such as wheat, vegetable oil, and corn, hampering traditional preparations. And 5 African nations will be heading to the 2022 FIFA World Cup. Liverpool star Sadio Mane converted a shootout penalty to help African champion Senegal beat Egypt for a spot in Qatar. Cameroon, Ghana, Morocco, and Tunisia also booked their place in the finals. And Nigerian security forces fired tear gas to disperse hundreds of fans who stormed the pitch after the Super Eagles lost to Ghana on away goals. And this week, we are exploring the city of Sokoto, a bustling transit hub in northwestern Nigeria. It's located near the Niger Republic border at the meeting point between the Sokoto and Rima rivers. Let's have a look. And that's our show this week. Please share your thoughts and suggestions about the stories you've seen on this episode or ideas you would like us to cover on Twitter using the hashtag Africa Matters. Feel free to reach out to me on my personal handle at @DeshawaJosh. You can watch this episode and more on YouTube. Just search Africa Matters TRT World. Like, comment, and share. See you next week.